do international co-productions matter at all anymore? In a world of worldwide deals, Netflix deals, Disney, Apple, etc., where streamers want to buy the rights to something in perpetuity all over the universe, not just on this earth. What is an international co-production for anymore?
Sure. I think there, a diversity of distribution models and different companies doing different kinds of things keeps the economy of making movies sustainable and viable. And the more opportunities to distribute your film in different ways, the better off I think we all are. So, there is that model. We're very cognizant of it, of the global rights, streamers, and how they operate. But that works for certain types of movies, and it works incredibly well for certain types of movies, but it doesn't work for everything. So, thinking about knowing as much as you can about your opportunities and your options as you're making those decisions allows you to make the best decisions.
So let me take a step back and have us introduce ourselves. Why don't you start, Jason?
I work at Cinetic Media. We're a New York-based company. I work in the sales department, overseeing global sales. Some of that involves international territorial sales. Sometimes that's global deals. Sometimes that's working with international partners on distribution, both in North America and internationally. So something I think about a lot.
And Laura, what about your background? We only have an hour.
Okay. I know I have. I'm a hybrid.
But I'm curious how you would frame it.
Okay, first and foremost, I'm an American Canadian, so I can speak to the co-pro because I'm both citizens. I have both citizenships. I'm a producer, but just as of October 1, I took a new job. I am now Chief Content Officer, or Chief Creative Officer, a very long title, Chief Creative Officer and Co-President of Content for an independent production company and media company called Blue Ant Media. I have done many things. I've been on the broadcast side. I was at the general manager of Sundance Channel here in New York. I was at Discovery, president of 2 small digital networks, and then started Sundance Productions with Robert Redford in 2012. And for 7 years, I independently produced a lot of documentaries, a lot of doc series, and a couple of scripted series. And I would say, having sat on the broadcast side, never as a streamer, but always as a buyer, and then now 7 going on 8 years as an independent producer, I think the idea is co-venturing, because co-production can be a little bit of a misnomer, but co-venturing means partnering with producers around the world. So whether it's, Americans working with Canadians or with the Brits or with the French, to Jason's point, yes, we recognize that the streamers take everything worldwide, 100% commission, in perpetuity. But I would argue that's probably 10% of the films that we all know exist. The other 85 or 90% have to be a little more, I would say, creative in financing. And I like to call them co-ventures because really what it is collaborations with like-minded creators, producers, and distributors and agents who help make films happen. So I'll give you an example. I'm working on a documentary with an amazing director, Dawn Porter. We were here last year with her 4-hour series, Bobby Kennedy for President, which we made for Netflix, which indeed, worldwide, outright buy. After that, Dawn got a call from CNN saying, would you like to make a documentary on Congressman Lewis? She phoned me, we said yes, and away we go. That's an example of a film where we've had to raise the money. CNN came in with a huge significant amount, but then said to us, if you want to own your film, why don't you go and try and raise the remaining, and I'm not going to tell you what the budget was because that's confidential, but we ended up having to go and raise probably another 40 to 50% of it, and spent time talking to everyone, sales agents, distributors, buyers around the world, et cetera, and managed to put together a finance plan that meant our film was fully financed, but as producer-director team, we own some of the rights outside of North America, which is really good for us. So that's one example. I've made films across the board, and I just think events like Doc NYC and markets, you just never know who you may collaborate with, and I always say you have to keep a very open mind. And you have to be a really resourceful producer. It's not easy. You have to have good friends in high places.
So John Lewis is an interesting example because he's a legendary political figure, civil rights activist, and yet he's also a very American figure, not necessarily, I would guess, super well known around the world. So you're tasked with finding money outside of the U.S. for that film. How do you go about doing it with what I imagine a lot of folks here are doing is a very American project and finding money outside of America for it?
Great question. It is contacts. It's having a little understanding of the marketplace. Plus, our main partner, CNN, helped us. Helped connect with some people who were very like-minded in the sense of saying, yes, he is a American civil rights icon, but he's still a living legislator. He's making policy. He's been in the House of Congress for decades now, and he's very important, especially when you think of what's happening right now with our government. And what I think with the explosion of documentary and non-scripted programming, as we've all witnessed in the last 10 years, there is appetite to look outside of the U.S. for some of these subjects. Interestingly, Don has worked, and the film will premiere in 2020, so I'm talking about a film that none of you have seen, so I'm sorry. But we have thought about, did the congressman ever go to France? Did he ever go to England? Did he ever go to South Africa? He did. Let's see if we can find an archive clip. So thinking about it creatively, trying to add elements in your project that will appeal to an audience not just in the US but outside has been very cognizant. We did that on Bobby Kennedy too. Netflix told us something interesting. At one point they said, the Kennedys are very well beloved in Europe, parts of Europe. So we found a clip of Robert Kennedy going to Berlin after his brother had died and kind of going as an ambassador before he was even running for president. And it was beautiful footage that was rarely seen, and Netflix were like, great. And then sometimes we look and see, like just on Twitter, I check out, Bobby Kennedy for president, and the Germans, the French, and the Brits are like, we love this series. So I just think it's thinking in a global way. That's really it. It's just thinking, what can we add? What small element, if you're looking to do co-ventures outside of the U.S., what are the small elements that might help sell your project?
Jason, as a producer's rep, when do you think folks should be going to potential international buyers with projects? Is it a situation where you want to put American money first and then you try and find a gap against the rest of the world? Or is it a situation where you want to find a partner outside the U.S., particularly if it's a non-American project first? Like, how do you think about what you do as a rep for projects and finding foreign partners?
I think it's a simultaneous process in terms of when you go out, and especially in the conversation with co-productions, in some instances there are rights that aren't being granted, and knowing that and having to think about that, especially when you're trying to include an equity conversation into the mix, is something we like to do simultaneously, so we know what all of our options are and what doors we're closing as we start to make decisions in terms of finance of the film. Because some co-productions don't include distribution deals, but a lot of them do, especially in Europe and sometimes in Canada.
Give me a raise of hands for those who know what he means when he's talking about equity. Okay, so there are many who do, there are many who don't. Do you want to talk about what it means, what equity is as a financing mechanism for a film, and how you mix it with pre-sales or co-production money?
Equity, especially as it relates to it's much clearer when you're looking at a narrative film. But for documentaries, equity is it's a financial position within the film that gets recouped within a waterfall. And it really depends.
So it comes from individual investors who are putting money into a film, and they're getting in return not necessarily a set of rights, but a piece of whatever revenue is generated by that film.
And there are so many dynamic models to looking at that. CNN is an example of a company that can put in a combination of equity with distribution rights. So they sometimes license the film, but they also put in a chunk of equity that they can recoup. A&E is another model that used to do that. But really the equity portion is the piece of financing that comes from an investor who is looking to get the money back.
So how do you combine equity with international sales? How does that work?
I think it's always, the equity position is always looking at what the distribution opportunities are when you go to sell the film. So sometimes, in order to shrink the equity position, or shrink the remaining budget that needs to be filled, you pre-sell the film, or you find grants, or you find soft money that can be put into the film. So that's also dynamic, because if you're looking to get your entire budget covered by equity, that's often a really big amount of money, and a lot of investors are less reticent. Some investors like to put in a percentage of the budget, and they feel more comfortable knowing that 80% of the budget is covered through other means, and they're really reducing their financial exposure, but also knowing that sometimes there are limited upside. They're limiting their upside by doing so. So it's a balance, and I think knowing the investor and knowing the equity partner gives us a sense of what they're looking for and how they like to invest.
Laura, one way to think about international funding is selling rights. So you're selling the television or various streaming rights or et cetera, or all rights in a given territory, France, Germany, Japan, et cetera. Another way to think about it is that because there's government support in different countries around the world for the arts, by having an international partner, you might actually be able to get some kind of free money, what's often called soft money, or in the US it's talked about as grants, that goes toward a project. Can you talk about the example of Three Identical Strangers and how they combine some different funding with with actually a tax rebate?
Right. So the company I'm working for, Blue Ant, has an office in 6 countries at 6 locations: New York, LA, Toronto, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. So we spend a lot of time thinking about co-ventures, co-productions, joint ventures, whatever you want to call them. So Three Identical Strangers was made by Raw Productions, very, very well-regarded, highly acclaimed company in London, based out of the UK. And they were making this film with CNN and other partners. And they were looking, because it was a very significant budget, and I don't know any of the details of the budget, but I know my company out of Toronto were approached to help collaborate on Three Identical Strangers as a co-production partner, because Canada and the UK actually have treaty co-productions, which just mean a formal arts kind of alliance. They have an agreement between the 2 countries that if you join forces as 2 producers in those countries, you can take advantage of grants and tax credits. Sometimes it's for labor, sometimes it's against things like editing your film, or doing a mix, or doing your color correction, or doing your composition. So you'll often see these co-productions between non-US companies because they're smaller countries. They don't have the buying power that the US has. So I know England and Canada, I know there's Scandinavian treaties, there's treaties for France and Canada. So you just have to kind of hook onto a producer who understands this. But what they did do is they did, for Three Identical Strangers, they did the recreations, which I thought were, and I'm a pretty judgmental person. I'm not a fan of recrees and dramatizations because I think they can be really often, unfortunately, cheesy. But I don't know if you've seen that doc. They're beautiful. They're very well done. They feel, they're not recrees of a situation. They're meant to create background and ambiance and make it feel like you were there, but not make it seem like this is actual footage from that time. And they did the recrees outside of Toronto with Blue Ant, and were able to trigger, again, these are just technical terms, but trigger a tax credit and funding from the Canadian government, and the labor credit, I think it was 30 to 35%, which, if you think of a budget, let's just say your doc is $1 million and you can make 30%, which is $300,000, by doing one element of it in another country and partnering with someone who you have simpatico and creative alliance with, it's kind of a great deal. It's basically money back into the production. And you have to trust, because you also have to partner with a producing entity and a producing team that you believe has your same, aesthetic and creative in mind. So as another example, we're doing Drag Race Canada right now. And I know Fenton Bailey and Randy Barbado from World of Wonder. I greenlit many shows with them. We did, Transgeneration and Fabulous Beekman Boys when I was running channels, Jay Baker. So I phoned them about a year ago and I said, have you ever thought of doing Drag Race outside of the US? RuPaul Drag Race is so huge. And they said to me, well, actually, yeah, we're doing it in Thailand, we're doing it in Chile, and we're about to shoot in England. And I said, let's bring it to Canada. So again, it's an interesting co-venture where they take the franchise and it's a non-scripted big show, and we're taking advantage of getting tax credits in Canada. They're doing the same in England and in Chile and in Thailand, and taking their show around the world and creating it with like-minded partners. So I would say there's 3 things you need to do these. You need a good producing entity who understands this world, because it is not easy and no one should be expected to know it if you have never done it. 2, you need a good lawyer. I have to say, like all my projects, that's the first person I line up, is a very good lawyer who understands deal making. And 3, I would say you have to have connection. You have to have relationships, because this is a relationship business, and you have to have relationships or have people on your team, whether it's your agent like Jason, an EP, a company who has those relationships, because it can be very difficult to navigate as a filmmaker. And I always try and say to my filmmakers, I want you to focus on the creative. I want you to think about your vision. They should not be worried about how is this co-venture or, co-production going to work. So you do have to build a group of people that you have a like-minded trust with.
Let's make it concrete for folks. Like, let's say that you have an American project and you have half of your budget through one way or another, and you want to try and source the other half of the budget internationally. How do you go about doing that as an independent filmmaker making your first or second film? Are there markets that you go to? Are there forums? Are there key folks like yourself that people should reach out to? Like, how do you do that at the beginning of your career?
Forums are great. This is great. I think this is an example of coming together and finding like-minded people, and hopefully some of you have dual citizenships or
EU.
But another example is that if a forum or projects pitch primarily to commissioning editors all around the world, and they're looking to come in often early. They want to have an editorial say in your project, and they can oftentimes come in with a little more money than they would out of their acquisition budget. But really to access a significant amount of money, you usually need some kind of production partnership in order to make the film applicable to soft money in another country. Because if you're a producer and a director who are both from America, it's very unlikely you can get any grant money from any entity unless you have other things that can trigger support. And a lot of films we work with, a lot of American filmmakers we work with, for example, work with Danish editors and Danish producers, because there are a number of really amazing editors and cinematographers out of Scandinavia, and they have an infrastructure to support films. There needs to be a certain threshold that the film hits to be designated as a Danish film in the eyes of Denmark, and what that is, I honestly don't know. You need to talk to the producer to figure that one out. In every country, that's very different. How Canada designates a film as Canadian in terms of how they can support it, even nationally, and then these sort of individual funds within Canada, it's different for every region. It's different nationally. You need to have someone who has real experience in this process. So having a production partner is really the key, and going out to these places and meeting those people are probably the best way for you to go out and venture to do that.
Laura, can you talk about some of the larger market trends? I know, for example, 15, 20 years ago, there was a ton of money that was available through places like the BBC or Arte or ZDF or these different public broadcasters in Europe. And over time, that money has gotten smaller and smaller. So what the BBC might have been able to put into a film 10 years ago is significantly larger than what it might be able to do now. How do you see these trends as playing a role in your own thinking, and where do you think they go 10 years from now? Do we still have these public broadcasters as significant funding entities? Like, what are sort of some of the longer term trends you see?
That's a great question, and I think public broadcasters and public funds, having grown up in that world in Canada, are sadly under threat. When look at, wasn't it Disney Plus that launched at 5 a.m. today, with the onslaught of Disney Plus, HBO Max, Apple this year, like Peacock, which is incredible for all of us as consumers, but challenging if you're running an independent fund or if you're a small country trying to make your own films. I think it's a challenge. And if you talk to anyone who makes projects in a region like outside of the US, in Scandinavia or Europe or Canada, they go, it's harder and harder for them to get money because those funds, as you say, Dan, are shrinking. But I look at it as opportunity in the sense of also, trend-wise, I'll just be frank, you have to have an amazing director. You have to have a subject that people are interested in. I feel like the explosion of non-scripted documentaries has been so positive, but the challenge is that the films that are getting bigger budgets and more significant budgets are the ones that have, appeal and have commercial viability and are packaged, as we say, a director, a subject, whether it's a DP, an editor, these things all matter. And for the higher end documentaries, when I say higher end, I mean just the more expensive ones, those elements become more and more important and are frankly the only way you'll get in the door some of these bigger streamers. But internationally, what I think is really interesting is they are very interested in, there's still an art mandate in parts of the world that I think is challenging. So if you're making films about artists and creatives, I know that IDFA is a great place to take your reel. I always say there are 2 or 3 things you need to do. You need a pitch reel. You need a 1 to 2 minute sizzle or taster reel. You need to know your director and have your director-producer team at minimum, I think, to get a project off the ground. And you have to have a great treatment. And those 3 things, you can then start pitching your project. And that's what I tell every director that comes through my door. Do you have these 3 things? Who's your producer? Do you have a reel? And what's your treatment? Can I read it, please? But I think internationally, every country is looking at how do they coexist with the Netflixes and the Amazons and the HBO Max and Peacock. Some of those platforms are not coming into the world yet, but they will, I guarantee you, in 10 years. So I feel like there's going to be this combination. I like to think that the public broadcaster in the ideal world, whether they're in Europe or in Canada, will find a way to work with the streamers and use, the private money of the streamers to leverage more production from the public source. And it's happening. I know CBC has done ventures with Netflix, and I know in Europe they're doing co-ventures. And that's a win for us who are producers, frankly, that if you can figure out getting some money from the smaller entity that gives you creative and artistic control, and then you combine that with money from a big streamer or a platform, and it helps double your budget than it would have been otherwise, to me, I'm thrilled. I'll take it.
One of the things we've been talking about is films in particular, but increasingly the trend in nonfiction is towards both limited and returnable series. Do you think the same principles apply in terms of finding international co-production money for limited series as well as for features?
It's hard. I'm finding that my series that we're getting greenlit, if you go to a streamer, they want full rights. But there are some examples of series, limited documentary series. The Staircase is a great one. I don't know if any of you saw The Staircase, but The Staircase was a French director about an American crime story shot with BBC money back in the 90s. Nick Fraser actually greenlit it probably 12 to 14 years ago. They've made 3 subsequent follow-ups as specials. We licensed it at Sundance Channel when I was there, now called Sundance TV. And it was, at that time, the money had come from the Brits, the Canadians, and then we gave them just a pre-license. And then we made two more specials, and then they did a third, following up the case, the Peterson case through the years. So that was a great example of 3 countries financing a limited series, with subsequent seasons. I think it's more challenging, and there was an amazing producer, Denis Poncet, who's now sadly deceased. He died a few years ago, but he was like an international guru of funding. And so the director connecting with this producer a French producer who knew how to put money together, was how they were able to make that project happen.
And do you guys think that there are trends in terms of subject matter that are more interesting internationally than they are necessarily in the domestic universe. For example, in the US, one of the trends in nonfiction in the last few years is towards true crime. There's also been a lot of food films, both films and series that have been done. Are those genres also interesting to international buyers? Are there different genres that they're interested in? Like, what are the sort of broader trends in that regard?
True crime is popular everywhere. It's well, very popular. It works. I don't know why. Food, a little less so, but it's still quite popular as a thematic, just because it's global. Anything that feels, I think things that get licensed globally are still, there are also things that are popular with Netflix, so popular cultural figures. Music documentaries have been a huge boon in the industry and have done incredibly well on streamers. They also do really well in theaters, so you can license them to the actual distributors all around the world. So I think music is probably the other genre that plays very well.
Yeah, this festival opened up with the Robbie Robertson film last Thursday, and that was actually an American-Canadian co-venture, because Robbie Robertson's Canadian, though he spent most of his career in the US, but they were able to access Canadian funds and work with Imagine, Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, and then Justin Wilkes and Sarah Bernstein, who run the Imagine Doc unit, partnered with a Canadian company, White Pine Pictures, and made a beautiful film about Robbie. And it's a music film, and it's amazing. It's about the band, and who doesn't want to watch 60s groovy footage from Woodstock? Those films are doing very well. I think crime, I do think movements and cultural kind of conversations. There's political films. I think we're going to see a lot of 2020 films coming out next year about the election and what's happened to our democracy. Those are, just look now, even on Netflix, what's happening, not just in the US, but in Brazil, in parts of Europe. Those films resonate. I mean, we had 2 Steve Bannon docs last year. It's a lot of Steve Bannon. But big figures that maybe are polarizing and controversial make great film subjects, in my opinion. They do. I did a film last year with a great group of producers and directors, the Zimbalist brothers, Mike and Jeff Zimbalist, on the Momentum Generation big wave surfers, who really gained their popularity in the 80s. They were all 14, 15-year-old friends who became big surfers in Hawaii. And it really was a band of brothers story over 25, 30 years of them surfing together. They'd had tragedy. A couple had died in waves, big waves, or had accidents. Some died due to drug or alcohol overdosing. But it was about a core group of guys who now in their 40s are still friends and who've come through it thick and thin. And that film has done very well outside of the US, even though it's surfing and it's very American. It's done well in countries where surfing is everywhere, so in parts of South Asia, et cetera. We were able to sell that film to Universal International. HBO US bought it. We privately financed it. And it's done, I just saw on Instagram they were doing a Senegalese screening 2 days ago of Momentum Generation. So it just shows that, I think big figures, excellence in fields, people who've done something significant, whatever the country they're from, always inspire. So I think inspiring, look at RBG last year. I mean, people who have made a mark of excellence in their field also is what we're all looking to. I like the North Star docs. They make me feel good for 2 hours.
I'd love to take some questions from the audience and maybe use those as an opportunity to answer specific things and also maybe talk more broadly about some other issues. Does anyone? Yes, right there in the black.
At what point in the production process is it best to start bringing in an international co-producer? Is it after the film is made or before?
So the question was, at what point in the production process do you want to bring in an international co-producer?
I think it's much earlier than that. So, because, depending on the country, depending on the producer and the relationships and what you're really utilizing them for, they can access opportunities within the production of the film and also the funding of the film. But certain countries and certain funding bodies can give you pre-production money and can give you money to even create a sizzle Whereas, so if you're bringing someone in super late, there's only so many things that they can access for you, which are going to maybe be post-production funding or festival services. But if you have earlier, you have someone on who knows how to work these systems, they can get you different kinds of access and different kinds of money, not just selling a movie or these festivals or.
Yeah, the earlier the better, and it has to lend itself, I think. That's one thing too. You know, look, like the Robbie Robertson film is a great example. Canadian singer who's made his mark in America, so immediately you go, oh, this could be the two countries collaborating because he has a huge presence and history in both countries. So it has to make sense for your project, but that's what we do all the time. I also have to say it's a hustle. It's not fun necessarily. I'm envious of people who can just walk in and get all their money 100% financed in one meeting. I find most of my projects take, a long time, and you really hustle, and you just have to be gracious and collaborative. I like to say we as producer filmmakers, we do social work. It really is social work all the time in a good way. You're, always keeping doors open. I think I want to work with people who also don't take themselves so seriously and understand that the world is a big place and you don't want to burn bridges and you want to be collaborative. And I work in transparency. So when I partner with production companies or producers, we share everything. I share budgets. That, to me, that's the only way to work. 'Cause the minute you don't trust your partner or are transparent, I just feel like projects fall apart. So working on John Lewis has been great. I just put everyone on one email, so everyone knows what everyone's doing, whether they want to or not. And it really works well because I go, hey guys, we're about to finish lock picture. I would like your notes by by Friday. And everyone is on the exact same email. So my distributor, my financier, my broadcaster, they all know everyone's getting the same batch of emails at the same time. It just, you're an organizer. When you're producing these films, you have to be very organized and diligent, and it just is, a kind of continual wrangling of kittens. That's what it really is. It's a wrangling of your partners. And I see my role as a producer and now as an executive for a company that's looking to do a lot of production is really being a conduit for making projects happen.
Yes.
Hi, I'm producing an epic story that's kind of British, American, and Bahamian, and I have British and American money, but I was wondering, do you have any advice on accessing Chinese money? Because the Chinese have basically bought the Bahamas in the last few years.
Wow.
I mean, they've invested billions. They've just kind of opened a flight that is a direct 13-hour flight from Beijing to Nassau. Do you have any advice on Chinese money?
So the question is about a project that deals with American, British, and Bahamian subjects. And China happens to be very involved in the Bahamas and has opened a direct flight. And so how do you find co-production partners in China?
Call Ruby Chen. she's like she's the biggest operator of international law firms in China. And producing Chinese films, she's great. And she's always at Hit Film. She's one of the people who are everywhere at Hit Film, teaching a film. So she's sort of on the circuit and she knows how to do these things. It's, from my experience, it's very tough to get any Chinese money at the moment for an American project because of regulation.
Trade war.
Yes. we had a really good run, and now it's done. So, 3 years ago, you can get any money out of China, and then we started selling documentaries for $10,000, and then like $30,000, which was better than zero, and now it's back to zero.
But it's true. She's amazing.
Yes.
We have a company in Singapore, by the way. So if they are selling, but it's you can come and talk to me. I'll at least take your card and see if the team in Singapore has any ideas too.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about things that you have to keep in mind in moving forward in the future with deals that you do with co-productions and how certain co-production deals, like for example, let's say with France or with other countries, may inhibit possibilities for possible distribution later on?
The question is a good one about what are the potential downsides of co-production deals and how can they come back and bite you if you had to give up a set of rights to get them? How can that influence the later distribution of the film? Jason?
One thing, I think especially as it relates to Canada, is the issue of bleed over. So if you're doing a broadcast deal in Canada, it is very hard to do a deal with certain broadcasters who have bleed over into the country. One of them is CNN, another one is PBS. So that's something you have to be really careful and clear about, especially with your Canadian. If you're choosing to get a Canadian partner, for example, I think you have to be very clear and candid about what happens if a CNN or PBS wants to be involved in the film. Like, is that even a possibility? Are you closing that door entirely? I think you have to be cognizant of that. And also when you bring on, especially international broadcast partners, a lot of them are they program months, if not years out. So especially if you work with, for example, Arte, they like to set your broadcast date maybe 8 months to a year out. And if your film isn't ready in time, or you have a festival date that's later, it can really run into an issue of the film broadcasting before the film really gets out there in a cycle. So knowing how you want to work and sort of the timing of everything is really important, because broadcasters operate on different schedules, especially international broadcasters, because it's really tough for them to move a film from one year to another, because it's a different budget. They have government, it's bureaucratic money that you're getting that is approved every year by government, and that number is usually shrinking, so pushing a film over to another year can be a real hurdle, if not an impossibility for some people.
There's another tension in a world of global streaming companies, which is that if, in order to fund your film, you have to get money from a particular territory, and they therefore have rights to the streaming or television or theatrical or some combination of those rights, then if you have a global streamer come and knock on your door and want to acquire the film, you can't sell it to them. So, because you don't have all the rights to be able to sell. And once you've sold it to a broadcaster, they're loath to be bought out. It will happen from time to time. There have been examples recently where PBS, for example, has funded something and Netflix has wanted it, so they found a way to make that work and have a PBS broadcast and have Netflix be able to stream it, etc. But if you go to the BBC and you get money from them, and then you take that film to a festival, and all of a sudden Netflix comes to you or Apple comes to you and they want to acquire it and they want worldwide rights, you're not going to be able to sell it to them. So I think one of the things is just understanding that the distribution of your film and where it ends up and the opportunities you have is intimately related to the way that you finance it, and it's kind of like you have to dance with the one that brung you, and just to be aware of that.
Yeah, I always say it's a puzzle, really, putting the production financing together. But you have to look at your film, your doc, and say, where does this belong? Certain projects feel to me like they're more kinship towards a streamer. Or I have a belief that I try everyone, and whoever responds first, fastest, and with the most money, I go yes. And then you build your project from that. Like when we pitched Bobby Kennedy, we actually went to a number of places. One place, who will remain nameless, said, we'll make a feature. And we were like, that's great. They'll fully finance a feature. And then we went to Netflix and they said, we'll make it a series. And my director, Dawn Porter, we sat and we debated. And I said, which do you prefer? And she said, you know what, I want this to be a series. So we went with Netflix. But we probably, on the feature side, could have put a little bit different financing together. But Netflix, we knew, was going to be a buyout, worldwide, all rights. And that was okay, because for that project, it made sense. Different projects you have to determine what makes sense for your project, for the creative. I'll tell you, it's kind of lovely to get one set of notes from one streamer and not have 4 or 5 partners all delivering notes and having deliverables. I swear, this film that we're finishing now for 2020, I will probably be spending Christmas and New Year's delivering assets to all 5 or so partners that we have to make that film, financed. It's going to be a huge haul. And I just deep breathe, yoga, meditation, and you work all morning. I go to my office and then I come home after events, screenings, and I work all night into the night. Like, people are like, I got an email from you, Laura, at 2 a.m. I'm like, yeah, just catching up on all the emails I have to deal with, because that's what independent filmmaking really is.
And also, I think some of our strategy, if we're going down the route of territorial pre-sales, is that if there is a sort of a mandate, the BBC loves the project and wants it, we're pretty candid in the sense, we have a relationship there that we can say, like, we need 40% of the budget, so unless you find a way to get us that money, we're gonna sell it to a streamer. So you figure it out. You find 10 other co-producers who will get us that money, or you know what's gonna happen to this project, and it's on her. So, those scenarios can play out, but I think you have to be clear and but taking, $3,000 from Israel and then realizing that you can't do an Netflix original deal is not like.
Not a good strategy.
Yeah, that's not a good strategy. So I think you do, like, if you're getting 60% of your budget or a huge chunk of your budget from an international pre-sale, that's just one way to finance the film, and you've made your bed, so to speak. So there are different ways to go about doing it, but I think you have to sort of be strategic in terms of what you're asking for.
And I will just say, co-productions, as great as they are, they're a lot of paperwork. They're hard. And so you have to be ready for that as well. There's lots of bonuses and benefits, but I think your project has to have an element like, is it a British-American story? Is it an American-French story? Is it an American-South Asian? Is it an American-South Africa? Like, and then if it's an American-South Africa, then my recommendation is go find a South African collaborating producer who will help you understand what's available in South Africa through grants and the broadcast system before you even, kind of roll camera, so that you understand what all the options are. And as Jason said, I always try and line up as much funding before we start rolling our camera, so that I know what kind of project it's going to be. I still have 2 other projects that are in the very early stages of financing, and I have very, very talented, very senior directors who would like to get started. And I'm like, we can't start, even though we have small bits of money, because I really want to understand how we're going to put this together before we really get rolling. There are a lot of projects that take 9-10 years, labors of love, and filmmakers make, small chunks of money here and there and sell territories and rights, and I love that. But frankly, if you are a working filmmaker, that's a very hard model to eke out a living, right? Taking 8-10 years to make a film. So there's different ways. I'm a producer who had to make a living, so I always wanted to put budgets together to know what everyone was, what we were all going to be working with, and understanding what the model and budget was, so I could tell my directors, here's what you have. Here's what we've got to work with.
Yes.
So if you start receiving money from a number of different partners, not a buyout like with Netflix and things like that, they have certain level of creative input or control, and the director loses that control? Is that correct?
So the question is about the creative relationship when you do a pre-sale or co-production, and the level of creative input that a broadcaster might have. And in many ways, it's the difference between a co-production and a pre-sale. Maybe you could talk about this.
When you're co-producing a film, it's all the devil's in the details. It's all contractual based on what they're asking for, whether it's notes, whether it's, some of them need to be cut to time, some of them have the right to cut it themselves to make it more in the vein of what they're looking for. There is a level of collaboration. It's not like ceding control often, but it is a level of collaboration that you have to be prepared for. And it's going to be outlined in the contract that you're going to sign. So again, having a lawyer or somebody negotiating on your behalf is really critical, because if you sign 10 different pre-sale or co-production deals, and each of them have different regulations and obligations, you might be making 10 different versions of your movie to deliver, which is a nightmare. And it is true. That's a reality for a lot of people. That's how a lot of Europeans fund their movies. But unless you have to do it, it's really aligning all your contracts to make sure that your deliverables are similar, that your rounds of notes are similar, understanding exactly where the commissioning editor is coming from in terms of why they're commissioning your film, because sometimes they have big thematic programs, but they might do the election, in Netherlands, and somebody else might do something else. civil rights movement, or like they'll 50 years after, they'll do some sort of anniversary or something. But like if they're coming at the project for very different reasons as to why they want it, it may create some issues in the end. And then selling a film, like a finished film, take it as is a lot easier because you can get a cut of a film pre-approved.
There's also a scenario where you might do a pre-sale, which means they're licensing it for a smaller amount of money, and they're just taking what you give them based on a certain subject matter and a running time, versus a co-production where they see themselves as engaged in the producing of the film, and they have notes, and they want to see you react to those notes. And so there are different levels of participation depending on how much money you get from that.
I often think your first film should be one that you can finance within your own territory or country, because then you'll have a calling card. And that's another reality, is making something that you can finance and get financed here in the US, and then your next project is more ambitious and you're looking at a co-pro. I just feel like then you have on your resume or on your filmography a film, whether it's a short. I've done a lot of work with filmmakers who come from all over the world, and I can watch their shorts, I can watch short docs, etc. It's good to have one or two projects already made so that people in the territories that you're trying to raise money in have something to look at. I think it's really important. I love working with first-time directors, but I think at a certain point in time, like I'll tell you, right now I have probably 30 projects that I'm looking at for Blue Ant, and the projects that are rising to the top are docs and doc series where the director has made some films or have made projects that are, have been noticed, critically acclaimed, have made some kind of noise, to subject matter. Is this going to be something that I feel is worth us putting a year, 2 or 3 years of our lives into? Because some of these projects will take that long. And then 3, do I feel like it's going to have appeal? Not just in the US, is it going to have appeal around the world? And how will we sell it and package it? So I think as filmmakers, there's 2 kinds of projects. There's your own personal, and I always believe that. I've worked with directors Guy Maddin, I've worked with Shireen Nishad, Isabella Rossellini. These are artists who make projects that come from their heart and soul, and they make no money. Those films cost 10 cents, and then they sell them. No, but truly, but they're artists. They're true, they're artists. We did 52 episodes of Green Porno Live for Isabella Rossellini on Sundance, but she didn't make that much money. They were tiny, and I said to her, Isabella, use these films, these beautiful little shorts, which are Dada-esque, and her dressing as an ant or a spider or a bee or a butterfly. I said, use those shorts for the next thing. And what she did? She created a one-woman stage play, and now she's traveling U.S. and Europe and Canada with a one-woman stage play. She sells out. She's done it here in BAM. She's done it down at the Brezhnev Art Center. She's in Austin this week for a week-long run. So she's taken those shorts and kind of created a new platform. And she said to me, Laura, you changed my life, because at 55, 60, I was too old to be the Lancome model face. She said, I couldn't get actress roles. I wanted to direct, and she'd come to me at Sundance and said, I'd like to make feature films. And I said, good luck with that. Like, that's going to take a long time and lots of heavy lifting. And the iPhone it was 2005. Steve Jobs had just announced the iPhone. I said, this is the future, Isabella. Remember those little iPods? And I said, make films for this. And so she came back 6 weeks later with, I have the first drawings for Green Porno, and they're amazing, stick figures. And I was like, yeah, I think we gave her $150,000 to do 6 of them. And they just projected and kept going, and they were huge hits. We went to Berlin Film Festival, went to Toronto, we played here at Tribeca. Like, they went all over. People started really loving them, and she got many, many opportunities because of that. So I always think you also need a calling card. And if some of you are first-time filmmakers or producers, that's really important, to do something that will get you noticed.
Yes.
I'm working on my first international co-production. We have 2 broadcasters attached, and I'm pitching it in by the end of the month.
Great, congrats.
And I've talked with some of my colleagues who've done it before, and all of them said that there's a point in which it looks like an amazing potential, more budget for the project, but then for this amount of money, you shouldn't jump into the co-production, because it's going to mean a lot of expenses, and the local region, and eventually it's not, they said many producers jump in because they have an opportunity for more budget, but eventually at the end of the road, it harmed the project, it calmed the story. And my question, I guess, is do you have a tip or a policy on when to avoid going into a co-production in terms of percentage of the budget or?
The question is on co-productions and the consequences of engaging them, and how do you think that through?
It's different for every film. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I think you need to know what your co-producing partner expects of you at the project, and how does that affect the film at large. Like, does it expand the budget? Does it take more time to make? And what is the added value there? Are they going to be able to access soft money so that offsets the added budget? Can they access editors or anything down the line? Can they access a bigger license fee or co-production license out of a certain territory? It's a lot of pros and cons, and I think you have to sort of figure out what they're bringing to the table and what your project exactly needs at that point in order to decide whether it makes those sense.
As a producer, anything under 50,000 makes me go very carefully into that good night. Like for 20 or 25, I just would think the paperwork alone, your legal bills, that's so hard. But so for me, I'm working obviously because I'm a lot older than you and been doing this maybe longer. Anything under 50, I would say red flag. Just really be careful. I have filmmakers that come to me and go, I can get 5,000 here and 8,000 there, and I'm like, great, but that's not for me because the amount of work is going to cost more than that in legal bills, in accounting, in your time and resources. So I would also say that if you're, let's say, looking at 100% of your budget, and if you can get 40% or 30% out of another territory, that's worthwhile. 5%, I just go, I don't know if it's worth the headache.
Yes, in the back. Yes.
You've touched on this in bits and pieces, but maybe you could talk about the range of responsibilities and roles that a co-producing partner takes on. The understanding of every film is different, but the sort of money only to getting deeply involved in those to providing support services. Could you just talk about that range?
Are you saying what the co-producing entity does?
Yeah, the roles and responsibilities in your project. Is it just money? Is it more than that? That's right.
So what do co-producers offer you other than money? And what responsibilities do you have to them other than to deliver a film for that money?
Well, if you're the lead producer and raising the majority of the budget, let's say you are that producer, whether you're here in New York or LA or you're in London or Toronto, wherever, you control the project, but your co-producer will be the one who is the liaison, if you will, with, let's say you're doing a Swedish co-production. They will be the ones talking to the Swedish broadcaster and the Swedish Arts Council and anywhere they're getting the money. So they take that on. They tend to be the ones who will get the contract in because each country requires that the producer from that originating country is the co-producer who gets the contract. Obviously, you as the lead producer will want to see everything. You want to see every single contract. You want to see all the deliverables. You want to see all the prerequisite requirements to make sure you're not signing up for anything that you don't realize. But their role is to act as, the liaison and the partner, and to tell you, okay, the Swedish broadcasting or whoever it is, SVT or that they need a 67-minute version versus a 75-minute version, that they'll want it with no commercial breaks or 4 commercial breaks. It's as Jason said, they'll have different deliverables. So they're communicating with you. And the whole point is they're on the same time zone, they're in the territory, that's their role, is to be, your champion, if you will. But that's why I always say, you have to partner with people that you feel you have a real simpatico and trust with. It can go south very quickly. I'm actually making a film on the Rossellini family right now with Isabella's nephew. He's Italian. We have an Israeli distribution company. We have money out of France, Italy, Israel, and we're going to pitch it into the US probably in January, February. But what's interesting there is we all have known each other. And when the project came to me, of course I said yes, because I've known Isabella and her family now for 15 years. But it has been a labor of love, and it's been 3 years. We're going on 4 years now next year with this project. So just to give you an example, and the lead is really the Israeli distributor, because she knows all of these co-producers and is helping gather all the money. She's the lead producer, if you will. And my job is to get them US money, so, and maybe Canada as well. But we divide and conquer. You know, Philippa said, I need you to help me with the US. I'm like, great, that's what I'll do. So everyone kind of, we sign off on tasks and responsibilities as partners.
Any other questions before we wrap? We probably have time for another couple. Yes.
Just real quickly, just when you have that sort of arrangement, these folks, does each one of you own a percentage of the project? Or is it owned by you and they all have the rights in their own territories?
So the question is about how does ownership happen when you have lots of different co-production parties? And I think really it's what does ownership mean? Are you talking about the licensing of territories, or are you talking about equity ownership of a piece of the movie? How does that work?
No deal is the same. I'll just say every deal is very different. In this case, it's the originating director and producing team who are out of Italy. They own it, and we all, at the end of the day, you know, I mean, I believe ownership is very important, but at the end of the day, also as a creative producer, you know, you're not going to see a ton of residuals on documentaries. It's, frankly, if you're building a library because you're a company that really wants to own your IP, that's great. But for 7 years as an independent producer, both with Sundance Productions, working with Mr. Redford, and then on my own, I was like, ownership is less important to me. You know what's important is that I make my fee. Because producers are often the first ones to defer and to, you know, wait and say, oh, I'll wait another year. More important to me than ownership, because ultimately, usually the broadcaster takes you know, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, they often will take all rights and they own it. Or your broadcaster will say, I've got it for 25 years or 15 years. So at the end, I say ownership is important, but it's not that important. If you never make a cent and you own, 0 of 0 is not a great equation for any of us trying to make a living in this business. So I often give up ownership. And when I partner with people who bring me projects, I assume they're going to own it if they're asking me to help raise money for a territory. If it's projects I'm originating with a director, we will often do 50-50 co-ownership. And it's the most fair. How can anyone fight with 50-50, right? No, it's, you know, it's to me very fair. If I'm going to go raise all the money and you're directing, I think a 50-50 partnership is fair. And that's where I start from. But then, to the point of equity, almost every film I've started on our own with a director, me and a director, we started 50-50, and by the end, we've had given away almost 75% of our equity to raise the money. And that's fine. It's just the business.
Okay, last question back there.
You mentioned earlier different kind of perceptions for documentaries specifically in the marketplace of where they fit high versus low end. What would you consider that range to be, if you could articulate that? So what's considered the lower end, what's considered mid-range, and what's considered high?
The question is, what are low, middle, and high-end documentaries? Are you talking about budgets for films?
Yeah, in terms of budget and relative to what's selling in the marketplace on a global level. Yeah.
Where is the marketplace right now in terms of the budgets of documentaries?
I think the bottom has sort of fallen out, so you can't say like, well, $250 is a low budget documentary. Like, it doesn't, I don't think it works that way anymore. And people finance things for very different reasons. So there is a world where these super high-end, very expensive documentaries do find a life with a streamer or with a variety of distribution options. But, you know, assuming that you will put X amount of money into a film and then get X amount of money plus back is really tough, and it's not the same case for everyone. You can assume that certain distributors are going to be reluctant to put in above a certain amount of money, but that really depends on the distributor. It depends on the distributor.
The
it, but can you give us a range of actual, how much would be a middle, high, and just the broad range of?
Well, films are being, I'll speak as the producer, films are being made for $200,000, $250,000. Those are labors of love. Often you're editing them at home. You're working with friends and family who are not taking fees. High end is $2 million for a feature doc, very high end. That's the, Martin Scorsese EPing, that's, like Oscar-winning directors. Those are the big budgets because those are global films. They have lots of rights. You have to clear them. You're getting music. You're licensing songs for the film that cost you $100,000 to license. So, the highest range of any doc I know, I've never made one for that amount of money, but yes, if you have big name producer directors and it's a big subject, when Martin Scorsese shot the Rolling Stones film that is now, 8 or 9 years old, I am sure that budget was $2 million. He shot over 2 days at the Beacon, 10 cameras set up. That had to have been massive. Full union crews, full, participation of the band, residuals. So it just ranges. 250, 2 million, it really depends.
In my experience, there's no middle anymore. There
That's
used
a
to
good
be
point.
a middle where there were lots of sales, and this had to do a lot with Netflix actually licensing films, which they don't do anymore. So they used to license tons of documentaries for individual territories as they were building their library. Now they're only doing originals, pretty much. So it used to be that you could get $500,000-$600,000 back on a documentary selling territories all around the world. In most cases, that's over. In my own sense of the market is either you're making a film for $1.5 million or more, and it's a giant film that will have a real theatrical release in countries around the world, and a streamer would want, and it's an Academy kind of movie, or you're making it for $200,000 or less, where you can cobble it together, where you might get a couple of public broadcaster sales. But anything in the middle, I find is very, very difficult to get your money back on. Okay. That's all we have time for right now. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for